Chapter 19. Grace could feel Christine's grief, more so, the comfort she found in her children, and the strength she drew from writing. Grace recognized the feeling well enough. In those moments, Christine's mind reconnected with what is. The heavens would open, offering counsel and strength when she needed it most. But with 3 children to support and no other income, she traveled, accepting commissions for writing and poetry. While away, her cryptographic diary was one of the many items that disappeared from her husband's estate as she struggled to reclaim it along with the rest of her inheritance. While she eventually succeeded, she never saw her cryptographic diary again, but the ideas on equality which it helped to develop formed the basis for one of her most profound works, The City of Ladies. Her books went on to be commissioned by global leaders, kings, princes, and princesses, passing on divine wisdom. What happened to it? Her diary, Grace asked, was found many years later in Europe and became known as the Voynich manuscript. The undecipherable text. 87 nodded with a wry smile. Thought you'd like that. She was a pioneer, and the first professional troll. Drove men crazy with all those pictures of naked women in baths, alongside a text no man could decipher despite their superior talk. Only to have the refined ideas published all along. Grace looked at the book, The City of Ladies, in a language they understood. She smiled as her consciousness returned to her room and sank back into her form where it lay, curled up on the floor. Some will dedicate their lives in the pursuit of what they cannot understand, ignoring the significance of what they do, missing the point in either. 87's brow pinched as Grace gave an unladylike yawn. Her consciousness safely back in her body, Grace's curiosity clung to it as sleep blanketed her, easing her grip on the finite and the afternoon light that filled her room. It seemed as if no time at all had passed since they entered Mobius. Funny thing, consciousness, she breathed, curiosity still stretching out, reaching for answers even as she drifted off. Makes you wonder, Grace continued with another wide yawn, flaring tiny nostrils. About everything. It seemed to Grace that consciousness saturated everything on a metaphysical level, and that Mobius connected it all, sustaining fundamentals and with it, life. There were life forms which conducted its restorative energy between the metaphysical and physical, thousands at a microscopic level and millions visible to the naked eye. Following that pattern, there were perhaps billions at a macroscopic level. A Russian doll of energy, rippling and expanding out from the source of what is, the very big manifested in the very small. All beings connected but confined out of necessity to their respective domain which they oversaw, like particles and bonding, from macroscopic beings that ordered the night sky, to humans that worked the earth and the cells in their bodies, to atoms, polarity and bonding sustaining fundamentals. Those furthest from the nucleus of the universe, the central processing unit, this heart of the fundamental of what is, had the most energy proportional to their task, while those close held more resemblance to this life-giving force. All were important, all tasked with sustaining fundamental parameters, and with it, life. 87 listened to her thoughts roll out. He'd seen things in Mobius, at its outer edge, reach in. The celestial from the fringe, leaving its domain, forming bonds outside of it, bonds that behaved badly. Drifting further into the realms of sleep, Grace felt as though she lay on a blanket so comfortable she could no longer feel it as, from within Mobius, 87 picked her up. From in her room, her body rose up from the floor and hovered midair before floating towards her bed where it settled. What else is there? Grace sighed, snuggling into the blanket that pressed her cheek. It was so big they couldn't be the only ones. The truth was, 87 wasn't quite sure. He had seen a great many things, not all of which he could explain. There were others, many others sharing this overlapping space, more diverse than physical reality could paint. Many were not constrained to any form, nor did they pass typical generational lines, and they varied in temperament as much as in their fluctuating appearance. There were those who seemed rather harmless, those who had been unwittingly sucked into Mobius and were struggling to find their way back, many on prescribed or illicit narcotics, which opened doors in their mind they hadn't known were there. He'd also encountered those lost in comas, and then there were those who appeared to have used Mobius to connect to fundamental order, directly to what is, to its wisdom. They were bright. They were very annoying. In truth, he did his best to avoid them. Grace, there's something you should know. Grace. But she'd sunk out of reach into a deep sleep. From behind the curtain of space-time, 87 brushed red curls from her face and watched her rest a moment. Her oddities and freckles, her red hair and clumsy charm, even the bump in her nose from where her mother had broken it as a baby, highlighted a beauty in her, so intense it pained him. From Mobius, he held back the noise from where her mother continued to hammer away at the door, allowing her time to rest. As she slept on, Grace puzzled over it, this common theme in every thread, enabling it to weft to the warp of space-time. From the crossroads of Mobius, she saw the attributes at work, a calling, an inner conviction driving one forward, stitching their lifeline to Mobius. All of a sudden, she stopped. It had to be some sort of mistake. Mobius had taken her down a very different path, and 87 was now nowhere to be seen. Glancing up, she came to a stop. It was like watching a home video of her as a kid, but somewhere she never remembered being. She hovered behind the curtain of space and time, gawking at her young, freckled face with glittering green eyes and curly red mop of hair. "Come on, Velda," a young voice called, from where Grace wasn't sure. She simply stared in disbelief. Velda King. The Velda King. The woman who'd established Inter, their global technocracy. Grace pictured the stoic, middle-aged woman. She was, of course, much older now and blonde. Yet here she was, a tiny red-headed kid that looked almost identical to her. Grace couldn't believe it when moments later what appeared to be her twin bound in. By all appearance, Annika appeared a carbon copy of Velda, though far more confident. Zooming out, Grace checked their location. Mobius had taken them back to the year 2030, overlooking the outskirts of a small rural English town near Cannock Chase, shortly before the world fell apart. The resemblance was uncanny. Hovering there a moment, she zoomed in to overlay her DNA and genetic structure. Velda King, or her twin Annika, her mother,